up, people? Welcome back to another episode of Stars and Garters. I'm Katie Pettit, and I finally have another Rewatching the MCU episode for you. This is part 4. I ended on, I think, Infinity War last time. I had so much to say about this section of my rewatch of the MCU that I actually wrote it down, so I'm not just winging it this time. And I can no longer confidently say that Infinity War is my favorite Avengers movie. But before we get to the movie that you know is coming, I have to talk about the end of the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. show because that came first, so I had to get through that first. So even if this is usually where you click off or skip past, if you are a Marvel fan, just listen for a second. I need you to heed my warning and whatever opposite of warning is, my encouragement, I don't know. First of all, the last two seasons, season 6 and season 7, it was literally reminiscing about the good old days of seasons 1 through 4 while watching this, because the show gave us some incredible character arcs and storylines despite having like an eighth of the movie's budgets. There were some scenes that I would literally call Emmy worthy, which feels weird to say because I don't really care about award shows, but I'm not sure else how to describe how good some of this show was. Like, the scene after Daisy gets her powers and she's locked up and nobody trusts her, so Fitz lies to everyone else in order to keep her safe, and he hugs her and he says there's nothing wrong with you, you're just different now. It was beautiful. And then the show did Secret Invasion better than Secret Invasion, because if you replace the LMDs from season 4 with Skrulls, you get Secret Invasion, and it was done beautifully. But tragically, I'm not here to talk about the good old days, because at this point in the rewatch, it came time for me to watch all the way through the end of season 5 to season 7. So, where do I even begin? First of all, season 5 ended. The ending was so unsatisfactory because they basically turned General Talbot into super powerful rule the world villain number 17, and then Daisy killed him with no effort. And then you give Fitz the most meaningless and rushed death scene I've ever beheld, only to be like, just kidding, guys, we're gonna use time travel, so the whole 5 minutes dramatic mourning you did means nothing. However, the one thing that made season 5 not quite suck at the end was that they did give Coulson a very nice send-off. So for me, it didn't entirely leave me with a bad taste in my mouth, because you're finally giving him an actual death where he gets to say a meaningful goodbye to all the agents he's impacted, and then get a really nice moment with Daisy, and then spend his final days with the woman he loves. So that was really nice. And then we started season 6. I'm still so deeply mad about this, because at first I was kind of like, okay, we're getting back down to earth, literally. And I think it was a good choice, maybe, to split the show into the team down on Earth and the team in space looking for Fitz in the future Fitz. I don't know. But it was only a good idea for 5 minutes, because then they brought Coulson back. It loses its appeal when you then kill him off about 4 more times. That's what I'll say. So, then the rest of season 6 was very forgettable for me, because I was so mad at them for making his well-done death from last season completely meaningless, and then the rest of the story was like, evil space alien, whatever. I really didn't care that much, because there was so much wrong with it. And then the last season was like, whatever. And as usual, Mac was right. He was right when he said that robots have no souls. So they literally made Coulson a soulless character. Besides that, the season was kind of fun in its execution, because they were time traveling, so each episode had a different TV era style, like a little like WandaVision. But like, even though the style is fun, there's just no point anymore. They have lost a meaningful storyline aside from Fitzsimmons being separated and having a child, which was admittedly nice because they deserve to have something. By the way, the Coulson LMD dies too, and then comes back, so nothing means anything anymore. So, overall, since I finally finished the show, I deeply wish it ended with Coulson's second death. So, if you've never watched this show, I really recommend season 1 through 4. They're really, really genuinely really good. But maybe watch, depending on if you want a sadder, like a bittersweet ending, or just a plain old happy ending. Either watch season 1 through 4, and then watch the end of the last episode of season 5, and that's the bittersweet ending. Or watch the end of the last episode in season 7 if you'd want just a happy ending. So there's that. It was a really good show, I promise, at first. So I choose to pretend that that's exactly what happened. It ended in season 4, and then Coulson went off with May and died, and then Fitzsimmons got married and had a child. That is how I think it ended, personally. but that's just me. So, okay, now that we're done with all that, we can get into the one that people actually watched and know about, because after that I rewatched Avengers Endgame. First of all, how did I somehow forget that this movie is as phenomenal as it is? I had pretty much always said Infinity War was my favorite movie, and as I said in the last episode, Infinity War is still an amazing movie. But I think saying that made me think that like Endgame was like not that good, and also maybe I got bogged down in people hating on the time travel aspect of it. But like screw that noise, because this is now my favorite Avengers movie. Like dead serious. Endgame is now my favorite Avengers movie. Like, where do I even start? And I mean that positively this time. So the 5-year time skip was such a smart play, because it shows that this was like the one thing the Avengers couldn't fix, and they like were so defeated that they thought they would actually have to move on from it. That central tension that Tony has throughout the movie is brilliant, because this permanently just jaded man has finally like found happiness even after the tragedy, yet he still risks it all for a chance to undo this huge loss for everybody else. Obviously, I love how they bring the original 6 Avengers back together for this, to see how they've changed and give them each a conclusion. Black Widow chooses to sacrifice herself for this new family that she found. Hawkeye's done. Nat pulled him out of his dark place, and now he gets to go live a happy life with his family. Hulk has reconciled his two warring halves and doesn't have to live in fear of himself. Thor makes up for his failure and gets his confidence back to go out and do more Asgardian stuff. Captain America completes his work as a hero and gets to live the life he always wanted with Peggy. And Iron Man, at the last crucial moment, lets go of his selfishness and makes the ultimate sacrifice for the greater good. Speaking of the original 6 Avengers and that beautiful conclusion, I think I've finally pinpointed something maybe a little obvious, but something that is making it so hard for the newer characters to catch on in the MCU. Yes, the original Avengers stories are done, but when you think of the more successful Marvel projects after Endgame, like WandaVision, Loki, or the Spider-Man movies that came after Endgame, those were still about characters that focused on already well-established, like, more side characters or villains who still had plenty of story potential from the Avengers movies. But when you think of the projects that started struggling after Endgame, like Miss Marvel or like the Eternals or She-Hulk, those focused on brand new characters, literally completely unbeknownst to movies-only Marvel fans. And I'll be able to talk more about how they did it right in certain projects like Hawkeye when I actually get to those projects in the rewatch, but it's just the simple problem of most people didn't care about these characters already, and the shows didn't give them a good reason to. And with these beautiful character endings in Endgame, it probably felt for a lot of fans like, okay, it's over, because they didn't care enough about any of these new characters. Anyway, back to why Endgame is awesome. I also want to point out how a 3-hour-long movie had incredible pacing somehow, with the just like slow, mournful beginning where like the heroes have lost, and then this like painstaking middle heist with that's like high stakes and super detailed, and then a fast-paced conclusion with what I now think is actually the most epic battle in the history of MCU. I wasn't in a movie theater where people cheered when I first saw this, so I just cheered in my dorm room on the rewatch, literally from the moment Sam says "on your left" until Thanos gets dusty. I was cheering. One comment: I do know that a lot of people have a lot to say about that section where all the female heroes come together to get the gauntlet across the battlefield. But here's my take on it. When I first saw this movie in 2019, I was about 11 or 12. And, my thoughts and my memory attached to that scene is 11 or 12-year-old Katie and her face just lighting up as all these super cool women just get like a brief shout out. Like, it's not even a long scene. It's like a minute at most. So, yeah, like, I will always love that scene. Sorry, not sorry. You can sit through 30 seconds of women being cool. Like, maybe it doesn't benefit the story, but like, guys, we know that some short scenes can just be a little bit of fan service, and for some reason this one annoyed people. But I will always love it. It'll always be special to me. Overall, this movie is just a beautiful conclusion to the original 6 Avengers stories that leaves room for the next generation of hero stories with wonderful writing and thrilling action all throughout, and it's now my favorite. Favorite Avengers movie, not favorite Marvel movie. And now, I have finally made it to the Disney Plus series and the first show in the chronological timeline was Loki both seasons. Now I remembered liking this series, but like I was not ready for just how incredible it actually is. Like I had forgotten so many things about it. Oh, that was one of the good TV series. But throughout Loki, we actually just get like an absolute masterclass in character-driven narrative. Like it's incredible. And what I specifically want to point out is that it handles time travel and the multiverse, two elements that are like almost always complained about in Marvel movies. It handles those two elements better than any other MCU project, dare I say. And I'm going to attempt to pinpoint why. Feel free to add your thoughts in the comments because this is not completely concrete, but this is the things that I noticed, why I think it worked. So when I think of movies that handle the multiverse poorly, first thing that comes to mind is the Multiverse of Madness, and I'll be able to dive deeper into that when I get to that movie. But the big problem was that the movie just used the multiverse as a gimmick. Like, for something called Multiverse of Madness, the multiverse was just a little bit. The movie basically said, whoa, look, in this universe, people go on red instead of green. Whoa, how wacky is that? And that was it. Instead, what Loki did was use the multiverse to bring their main character into, like, deep character introspection. Because this show understood that Loki, it understood everything about Loki, but like that Loki is fundamentally a narcissist. And that's why, for all his charm and his nice moments, he's never fully crossed the threshold into being a hero. And the only way to bring about that deep of a change is to literally bring him face to face with himself in a very literal way. They made the multiverse something very tragic and beautiful because they used it primarily to take a very serious and deep look at their characters. The multiverse is always going to be a little bit complicated because it's kind of the height of science fiction. It's fiction, like it's not real, it's not something that can happen, and it's always going to be a little iffy, but it needs to be used to bring characters face to face with their deepest flaws, to bring about fundamental changes. So the first season of Loki just starts out brilliantly by bringing us right back to the full-on villain version of Loki, and then just breaking him by showing him that he's basically destined to lose no matter how great he thinks he is. I have loved Sylvie since the moment that she was introduced because, well, Loki, but a girl and like slightly more feral. I also love the way she fights. I love all the fight scenes in this. I think they utilize Loki's powers very, like, just in such a cool looking way, but I also love the way Sylvie fights. She reminds me of like a stray cat or something. It's very a character inspired style of fighting. It feels like her personality. And the tension and conflict between Sylvie and Loki makes so much sense. I know people they were a little weirded out by Loki falling in love with Loki, but like of course they'd fall in love. They're Lokis. Like I said, they're fundamentally narcissistic. And two, they're both Lokis, so they're both very locked in, narrow-sighted about reaching their goal. But Loki has lost his original goal, while Sylvie still has hers. Eventually, as Loki realizes the futility of his original mindset, which was destined to fail, his new goal becomes protecting his newfound friends slowly but surely. Then, in season 2, it focuses more heavily on the time travel aspect. This one is a little harder to pinpoint why it worked so well, but I think it just boils down to the same thing as the multiverse stuff. They use it as a fun and unique way to dive deeper into the characters, namely Victor Timely, who I loved when I first watched this show, and I will always love because he is quite obviously the best Kang variant. I will not be taking any other opinions. And we also get to see Sylvie grow so much in these seasons because the impending doom of the temporal loom meltdown is the thing that forces her to realize she can't be solely focused on the destruction of the TVA, because Loki has already had that realization, and that's why they were butting heads in the first season, and now Sylvie has been brought to this point where she has to realize that if she wants her friends to have good lives. And the ending of Loki is very genuinely one of the best redemption arcs I've ever seen, because Loki had become an anti-hero after being the straight up villain, but just because it made people like him more, it wasn't a redemption arc. A redemption arc turns a character from a villain to a hero, basically. Loki went from only thinking about serving his own glorious purpose to giving up all of his freedom so that the people he loves can live their lives. Like, it's always nice when you can kind of give a character a heartbreaking conclusion without just killing them off. And this show definitely pulls that off with Loki. I think basically all the upcoming MCU projects could take some pages out of Loki's book, especially because they're going to be very much dealing with the multiverse, and I really don't want to be disappointed by Doomsday. I'm nervous about Doomsday because Marvel's been doing well lately, but this is just it's a big thing, quite obviously. Final thoughts about this section of the rewatch. I've started to think of the MCU in like eras. You know, like how Disney has their like Silver Age, Bronze Age, Golden Age, Dark Age, and like the Renaissance and all those things. I started to think about the MCU like that, and it actually makes a lot of sense. I think the movies that I talked about in the last Rewatching the MCU episode were part of the golden age of the MCU, like Homecoming, Thor Ragnarok, Infinity War, Endgame, and now I think I'm nearing the end of the golden age. I'm not at the end because there's still great shows like WandaVision and Hawkeye coming next, but the dark age of Marvel is approaching. It's on the horizon. But until then, I can have fun chilling in the golden age. I think we can all have fun chilling in the golden age because I think people might assume the dark ages started with the switch to like TV shows, but clearly that's not the problem because shows like Loki were actually still incredible MCU projects. So that's all for this Rewatching the MCU episode. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to comment and make sure to follow and subscribe. Please share the pod with your friends. It really helps. And you guys have been commenting more often, and I love that. So please share your thoughts. And I will see you guys next time. Bye bye.